pleasure to be here. And as you said, I'm going to talk about high-performance teams, why collaboration is more important than ever before, and some things that you can do to ensure better collaboration in your own team with the people working around you. So I want to talk first about why that's so important, why collaboration matters. Then I want to talk about what some of the mistakes that are commonly made in collaboration, some of the misunderstandings about what collaboration really is and how it works. And then I want to talk about what research suggests will help you and make it better. So the first point I want to make is that, of course, we collaborate from birth till death. And so if I ask you, how good are you at collaborating? Most of you are going to say, well, of course I'm good. I've done it my whole life, right? Or at least many of you will when we actually look at that. And of course, we do have to collaborate through our life, whether it's at home or work or whatever. But that doesn't mean we can't get better. And when we think about collaboration, most people think about something like this. That, when we all work together, we create this kind of single great team. We're like drops of water in the ocean, and we're going to create the great ocean. And we know oceans are very powerful forces, yeah? They're incredibly powerful forces. The problem with that metaphor, which is commonly used, is this. We are all individuals, okay? And we don't want to become just another drop of water in a mighty ocean. We want to be individuals, okay? And then we've got to deal, not only do we have to deal with that, in fact, that is our very strength. So you can't separate collaboration discussion from the diversity discussion. So to have a great collaboration, ideally you're going to have a diverse group of people, otherwise you may indeed end up with that other metaphor, which isn't going to be quite right. So collaboration. And what do I mean by it? It's very simple, just the action of people working together to get something done that none of them could have done on their own. I actually think this is a better metaphor for collaboration. Each of those strings is different, and they come together to create something that none of them could have done on their own, okay? Rather than that kind of ocean metaphor. And of course, for organizations, it's about utilizing the diversity that they have in order to create better performance for their customers, for their clients, for everybody. And so, this is what you want. You want everybody bringing together those unique pieces, and you create something, again, that no one could have done on their own. But let me be clear, first of all, about what collaboration is not. Collaboration is not kumbaya, aren't we all wonderful, big group hug, okay? So let's not mistake that as collaboration. That might be good and it might help collaboration, but it's not collaboration itself. Sometimes that gets confused. Collaboration is also not more meetings. So those millennials, they're showing up in my MBA classroom, and what they tell me is if they have to survive one more meeting, they're going to vomit. Right? It's just we've been meeting to death. So it's not about meeting, okay? It's also not about us little people working really hard to lift up the stars and make the stars great, right? Collaboration is when we're really working together. And it's also not, as long as you're here, would you like fries with your burger, sir? Okay, so as long as you're here, can I ask you to do this or this? Collaboration is when we genuinely come together to create something that none of us could have created. Now, why is it so challenging? If you think about it, our whole evolutionary history is in collaboration in teams, right? So why are we struggling now? Or why is it such a challenge now? And there are some real important reasons, some of which you've just heard about. Teams these days are operating in increasingly complicated environments. Things, the environment we have to understand is so much more complicated. No one can be an expert across the board. If you think even at the corporate level, we have boards. Boards are meant to be a bunch of generalists making good overall strategic decisions for the business. But it's impossible to understand the deep levels of security, the deep levels of marketing, the deep levels of all these things anymore. And so in order to deal with the complexity, what we've done is we curate teams with experts. This expert, that one, and that one. Now, if you're of a certain age, you'll remember this team, the A team. Okay, or if you watch old, TV, you'll see it. Now the A team, of course, everybody had a distinct role. When they did it well, it worked perfectly. Actually, that's not just television. In the real world, think about the next time you have a major surgery, probably that team of people has not worked together before. Or even for me, even more scary, the next time you take a flight, remember that those people have probably never worked together before and will never work together again. And we have to create a system that makes sure that the planes don't crash, okay? And that's what we're asking of collaboration now. And these problems we're trying to address are really complicated. So we're asking more of collaboration than we've ever asked before as well. It isn't just how do we survive as a family, how do we get a few things done? It's now complicated problems stretched over time, stretched over this problem of needing to have specialists within the team so everybody does something different. Now, in the last 6 months, here's a short list, for example, of companies that have come to me to ask about, I've been involved with advising, teaching, etc., about how to be better at collaboration. Okay? If you feel like you're struggling in your own organization, you are not alone. We all are. There's just, if you go to, say, Amazon and say, give me a book on collaboration or teams, these are the best sellers that are going to come up for you. I'm sure you've probably seen a couple of them. Some have been around for a while. And they each kind of talk about different aspects of collaboration. So there's a lot of interest out there, we know, in this problem and issue of collaboration. Google has spent millions studying collaboration. You may have seen in the news some of the output of some of that. They studied collaboration in Google, but they've now published a lot of what they found in the hopes of it also helping other firms. So it's a serious business, collaboration, and trying to get it right. So that's the setup. Now's the pop quiz. You didn't think there was a quiz, there's a pop quiz. I'm an academic after all, right? So if you're working with your team, how do you ensure collaboration? I'm going to give you 6 things that team leaders can do to facilitate collaboration in their team. I'm going to ask you to vote for 1 or 2 each of these, and we'll see who are the big vote getters. Ensure that everybody feels psychological safety and feel like they can say what they really want to say. 2, focus on creating a high degree of cooperation within the team. Make sure that individuals are doing what's right for the team. 3, ensure that the team operates in a well-coordinated fashion with few misunderstandings. 4, provide clear direction to the team. Ensure that everybody knows exactly what the expectation is. 5, emphasize shared values and culture within the team. And 6, draw attention to diversity within the team. Got those? Quick show of hands. How many of you are voting for number 1, psychological safety? Hands up. That one's really caught on recently. That one, a few years ago, nobody raised their hands. Now everybody's raising their hands. Great. 2, focus on creating a high degree of cooperation. Hands up. All right, a few, not too many. 3, make sure your team operates in a well-coordinated fashion. Hands up. 1, 2, just a couple. Number 4, provide clear direction and process to the team. That's always a pretty good vote getter. 5, ensure shared values and culture within the team. A few more, good. Draw attention to diversity within the team. Got a few, okay, good. Well, in some ways, it's a bit of a trick question because all 6 help you collaborate, okay? But the big vote getters from a recent global survey of managers said 3 things that came up most consistently for them. Most important, provide clear direction and process. It's one of the big vote getters always, wherever I talk. Number 2, ensure that that's emphasize shared values and culture. That didn't get as many votes as it sometimes gets here. It's usually a big one. And 3, very close, focusing on creating a high degree of cooperation amongst your team members. What's interesting about this is that we don't tend to, this one now has changed, you guys got this one, but virtually no one votes for number 3. What I can tell you, which is ensure the team operates in a well-coordinated fashion with few misunderstandings. That's the single most important thing you can do to ensure collaboration. Do we understand the problem in the same way? What's the problem we're really trying to solve here? What's really going on? What's underneath this? Asking those questions, because once you're clear, because a lot of times what happens is you can agree in action, but people will perhaps support it for very different reasons. And it's all fine on the surface, but when you try to actually create it, you're then going to be actually aiming at different things. Some great historical examples I'll be happy to share. Draw attention to diversity within the team signals that you're likely to have some misunderstandings. If we have a diverse team, we're highly likely to have different points of view. Different points of view means I'm going to be challenged a little bit. So when it comes, I'm not surprised. That's what it does. Now, here's an example from some research that I did. This is from some of our MBA teams. They've been working together for 8 months. They are pitching to VCs for real money. If they get funded, that's what they're doing. And I've asked them 4 questions at the start. To what extent, when you walk into the room, do you say, you know what, most people are trustworthy, it's going to be fine? Or you walk into the room and say, trust no one. Trust but verify. There's a lot of difficult people out there. Turns out, if everybody trusts each other, that's the best outcome. If nobody trusts each other, it's actually a workable outcome. Okay? Because nobody trusts each other, but everybody knows the rules of the game. Right? Trust and verify. What doesn't work is actually diversity. So I expect to be, everybody just, I trust most people, I'll then throw it right out there. And you don't return it. Wait a minute, why aren't you returning this? You get this sense of frustration. So what I show is this feeling of, I feel alienation from the people around me. It reduces trust. That further, the behaviors that follow that, ultimately leading to the team doing a poor job of their pitch. Okay? Something as simple as 4 questions, do I trust most people when I walk into a room or not, can predict for me how well they're going to do months later as they've been working together. And I can actually track the downward spiral as this happens, which is what I did in this work. Surveying them, interviewing them, continuing interaction to actually show that there's actually a step-by-step process. Now, again, we can't escape. We need to think about diversity as a part of this problem in collaboration. And by diversity, I mean all the stuff that makes us different. So yes, demography, race, gender, kind of stuff. But also the stuff you don't see. Values, personality, perspectives, functional background, or training. Those are all things that make us different and become more and more unique. Now, what most teams believe is that teams that embrace all kinds of diversity get an ROI. Now, ROI here is return on inclusion. Okay? So, yes, hands up, return on inclusion, yes. Do you believe? Some of you are not so sure. So, every corporate statement, I just picked one. I could have picked any number of them. I just happened to pick this one. They oftentimes look a lot like this, where, why diversity and inclusion matters. And the big emphasis is always, oftentimes here, that diversity will create better outcomes for their organization. So that is my question for you. What is the relationship between diversity and performance in teams? So the higher the diversity, the greater the performance. So for you, it should look like a 45-degree, right, angle. Yeah? Yes? Not so sure? Maybe some isn't, but not too much. Otherwise, you start coming down the other side. Right? Algorithm. So going up like that. Like that. Okay. So up and then over. Here's what the data tell us. Seriously. After tens of thousands of studies, that's the overall effect. And the short answer is yeah. No reputable scholar is going to stand here and say, that there's a reliable return on diversity. But before you panic, before I have a political argument about it, let me tell you that's not really, it's true, but it's not the whole story. This is a linear regression. If you actually look at what the data are shaped like, it's going to be shaped very differently. But the reason you get the flat, by the way, is this. So team diversity leads to two things simultaneously. First, information, which is the stuff we're hoping for. That diversity, if we can get it to work together, it's going to work well, but also tends to lead to poor social cohesion, meaning I find it hard. I mean, if you actually survey people when they go into diverse teams, they actually, the old days of people saying, oh, I don't want to work with these people, they're very different from me, it's not gone entirely. There's still some of that around, not much, a little bit. Most people very enthusiastic about the idea of diversity in their team. The problem is everybody likes discussion, everybody likes challenge as long as you don't challenge me. And then you get challenged, and suddenly diversity isn't so much fun anymore. Okay? And so I find it difficult to work with these people who just see the world in a very different way from me. They have very different values here. And talk about stuff that we care about are the values and what we are about. So leading to a mixed bag on performance. So when you actually get here, this is what the data really look like. More diverse team, more diverse outcome. So the best teams in the world are highly diverse. They manage the collaboration challenge really well, and they get extraordinary return. Okay? The worst teams in the world are also highly diverse, and they can't manage to work together. Okay? So that's why collaboration is really at the center of every organization's agenda right now. First, there was a focus on diversifying. Then they figured out that actually it wasn't enough. Now we need to figure out how to get these diverse perspectives to collaborate. All right? So that's the challenge. And that's what I spent the last, essentially, 25 years, it turns out, looking at. Diversity creates task conflict, debate, discussion. Okay? Now, if we look at that, so one of you talked about the relationship between performance and conflict when it comes to debate is this kind of inverted U. You want some debate, but if it gets too much, it's too much for our brains to manage right now. If you're challenged at every turn. So a little bit of constructive challenge, brilliant. Okay, you want some. Question is always, of course, exactly where that arc happens, but this is the idea. Task conflict, debate, leads to relationship conflict, if you're not careful. And that's the social cohesion problem. The negative affect, I'm tired of being challenged. Quite frankly, I don't like you. Okay? That, if we're plotting it here, not surprising, looks like that. Here's the challenge, every real group we've ever looked at, highly correlated. One leads to the next. And that's probably the study I'm most famous for out there in the world, showing that in a whole variety of teams and top management teams, et cetera, that when you have a lot of debate, it can get personal in a hurry. Now, the worst part of it is yet to come. After relationship conflict comes process conflict. Process conflict is where we have this perception of fairness. This guy over here gets way more than I do for the same outcome. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, his contributions are not very helpful, and yet, as team members, we get the same outcome. That is unfair. Once you get to that point, it's game over. Collaboration does not happen. You can catch it here. People are willing to work with people they don't particularly like, but when you get to this stuff here, and people's basic sense of values and fairness are implied, or you get involved, now you're in trouble. All right, so what can you do? Let me give you a few thoughts here about what research says you can do, everybody can do to improve collaboration in your team. First thing you can do, thinking about the complicated environments we live in, and that is, yes, transparent rules. We talked about that. The need for clarity, how the systems work, et cetera. You also need to focus on this common knowledge idea. So the known knowns, now a few years back, some of you may remember in the news, everybody's making fun of Donald Rumsfeld, the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the language was kind of funny, we laughed, but he wasn't wrong, okay? we do need to start by establishing what it is we already know in this problem before we get to solution. And don't start on solutions. That should be, further down the way in terms of conversation. Start with making sure we understand the problem in the same way. So similarly, when we've got all these experts together, create a shared understanding of the problem before discussing solutions. Emphasize, reward, and curate teams, not a collection of stars. Okay? One of the great things I get to do as director of our Leadership Institute is to interview well-known leaders. I got the very great privilege of interviewing Sir Alex Ferguson about 18 months ago. And along the way, somebody asked him, so why is it that every time you get a star at Man United, you would trade them off? Like, do you not like stars? Do you not like them? Do they threaten you in some way? And he kind of laughed, and he's like, no. Here's the problem. When people become stars, what tends to happen is you start treating the other people as lesser people. And you may be the best striker in the history of the world, but if nobody passes you the ball, it doesn't happen. So as soon as I see a whiff of you treating anybody as less than equal to you, they're out. And I know for him, right, for him that means their value is maxed, is now going to be heading down in the club, and actually they're still really valuable in the market, knowing full well that probably they're not very valuable to them, but in his business, you can sell those people on. In most of our businesses, we probably just need to see them go. You need to let a great performer, a star, go if they're unwilling to collaborate. And if you don't, it won't work. So that's a tricky one, but one that you need to actually pay attention to. You need to solve these problems by promoting feelings of psychological safety. You got that one. Encourage internal information sharing. Let me just say it this way. Truth alone in a group setting almost never wins. Okay? Truth supported almost always wins. The solo person with the brilliant idea almost never has impact. The two people who come who have a brilliant idea and both understand the idea have enormous impact. So if you want to have impact in your own team and in your own firm, convince somebody else first and come together, the two of you. You will have much better luck. Great article written not very long ago in the profession about the title was, what do we learn from our worldliest members? The short answer is almost nothing. Okay? Every board scandal that's gone on in the last 2 years, somebody in that board knew it long before it was public. And they become in public when a second person really figures it out. And it's really important that you come then with other people, especially if it's a challenging thing. Proactively manage conflict. Don't let it ride. Don't let tasks turn into relationship, turn into process conflict. Trust is key. And don't vote. By the way, voting is associated with teams that are unhappy and perform poorly, mainly because we use it to shut people down. Far better off to use something like qualified consensus. I've written whole articles on this as well. If your team is virtual, start by meeting in person, and do not overprescribe the meeting. They're only here for one day. Let's pack it all full from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. Mistake. Okay? Let people just get to know each other and establish the relationships. When you're working with multiple teams, make sure that the processes go smoothly between them. It's like a microcosm of an actual group. Last thing I want to tell you, and I'll wrap it up here, the single most important thing I can tell you about establishing and promoting collaboration in your business is this. The future of work is more diverse than ever, and you need to really focus, if you want return on inclusion, which you should want, make sure that the focus is on learning rather than performance. Here's one of the great ironies of things we found in the last several years. Firms and groups that focus on performance and performance only do worse than those that focus on learning or learning and performance. Right? Why? Because it gets your head up and out, and you can see all those things that Ian just told you about. And if you're really busy trying to perform here and you get your head down, you're not going to see any of it. So, irony, those that focus on performance do worse. Never doubt that a small group of people collaborating effectively can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Here are some of, is that the same thing again? Here are some of my favorite teams. Some are fictional, yes, but there are also a lot of real ones here that have literally changed the world. So that was the founding team at Apple. If you saw the film Hidden Figures, that's actually the real women who were there. Down in the left-hand lower corner down there, if you don't know those women, if you ever go to San Francisco, you should say thank you to them. They stopped San Francisco Bay from being filled in for housing. That was literally the plan San Francisco County had. These three women decided it was wrong for a whole variety of reasons and created a whole movement to stop it. We obviously know they were successful. Last thing, if you want any more information about what I do, how I study, what I've written, it's all here. I have a website. I'm on the usual social media channels. Everything is free, and if it's helpful, please take it. That's my little way of trying to make the world better and improve collaboration. Thank you.